All right, there we go. Seems like StreamYard's having a vacation, had a vacation as well. Let's get it going though.
Island time.
Yeah, island time on StreamYard here. We're getting the spinning wheels. There we go. 1 and 2. Hopefully everything's running here. A little bit laggy this morning in the pre-show room, but that's okay. Welcome in, everybody. We're back. It's God, what day is it? Thursday morning, the 16th, and it's time for a little episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendell, and joined once again by Scott Kennedy. Scott, how you doing? How was your vacation? We're just
I'm doing
gonna let
well,
you get
and
that
you kind
coffee
of
going.
froze
So
up a
you're
little
doing
bit
well.
on me just now, so I will. I'll take this. There we go. Good. I'm actually really impressed that you're here. Considering yesterday it was 3:30 in the morning your time. Coming out from Hawaii. For me, I was actually an hour ahead. I was in the Dominican Republic. First time I'd been out there, and it was wonderful. 72 to 82. You go outside, you see the weather. You're expecting to get hit with that blast of heat. Said you open the door, you're like, oh yeah, this is nice. So I actually relax. I don't do relaxed. I relax. Did 2 big dive trips all day, 7 to 7, exhausting. And then 3 days of just reading and sitting by the pool and chilling. I didn't realize how bad I needed it until I actually did it. So it was good. And Hawaii's paradise, isn't it?
Yeah, Big Island for a whole week, 3 days on the Hilo side, 3 days on the Kona side, did Volcanoes National Park, did a couple black sand beaches, bioreserve, farmers markets, snorkeling, whale watching. We saw a hammerhead shark. That was really cool.
Very cool.
Saw some obviously sea turtles, a lot of humpback whales. It's migration season out there. Did the diving, snorkeled down and saw some reef sharks. Manta ray. I did a night dive with manta rays. Also, that was absolutely incredible. They kind of do this like really slow, like barrel roll thing under the lights that they have you hold on there. So I was
Yeah.
like inches from my face to some. One of them was like a 12-foot wingspan manta ray. So it was amazing. Really needed. Hadn't done like a vacation like that with my wife since 2019, 2018, something like that.
I
So
was thinking, so my friend asked me, when was the last time it was just you and your wife? I was like, 2014.
yeah,
For me. It'd been a while. So yeah, it was good to get away. Good to be back though. Refreshed,
yeah.
feel good. So hope everybody's feeling good. We got lots to talk about because we've been gone a week. We got some Super Bowl. We got some Rob Bucksbaum coming in. He says, good morning, Nick and Scott. You're the best MHH team. Appreciate that. And I've missed your pod. Thoughts on Sexy Rexy and Vance Joseph for defensive coordinator. Oof.
So Rex Ryan, I think he hasn't called defensive plays since 2008, which makes me concerned. Obviously, he was a head coach for a while there, but I believe he gave up play calling responsibilities for a lot of that. So that does make me a tad concerned about him, considering how much the game has evolved with what defenses are doing over the last 3 to 5 years, let alone, nearly 15 years, something like that, right? 2008. So that concerns me a bit. Now, granted, he hasn't just been sitting there doing nothing this whole time. He's been, I'm sure, studying the game and everything still, but don't know what that looks like for him. So that's a pretty big leap for him. Obviously, he was a really good defensive coordinator and defensive mind for his time with the Jets. Didn't work so out with the Bells, and then coming as the defensive coordinator from the Ravens prior to that. So again, it's hard to really say. And I believe for the defensive side of the ball, I think scheme matters more for the offense. For defense, it's more about do you have the horses or not. And the Broncos, I think, do have, for the most part, a good set of horses. Not complete.
No pun
but,
intended. No pun
yeah.
intended. I worry about the media circus a little bit with
Yeah.
Rex Ryan, but knowing if it was we talked all year last year, it would have been nice to have a veteran defensive coordinator for this, first year coach. Rex Ryan wouldn't have been my pick for a first year coach, that's for sure. But Sean Payton can handle it. Sean Payton is arrogant in a good way. I mean that, as a positive. He's self-assured. He can handle the ego part of the defensive coordinator might be getting more of the spotlight. I don't know that Sean really cares, honestly. Rex Ryan was a soundbite waiting to happen. That stuff would concern me more if you had a first-time head coach. Doesn't concern me as much with Sean Payton. And basically, he had top 10 defenses for his entire career until he got to the last 2 years with the Bills. I think there was one that he didn't in a 10-year span, and it was 11th. Whether he was the defensive coordinator or whether he was the head coach, his defenses were top 10. Vance Joseph, you'll have to help me out on that one. I just can look at his wiki page and say, okay, he was a 1-year defensive coordinator before he was a head coach. Didn't work out so well. the numbers haven't been great since he's been gone.
Yeah, I don't think Arizona has the best talent on defense. I think is the biggest issue. Like they really and it's at the premium positions too. Like they don't have cornerback talent and they don't have defensive line talent. Well, if you're weak there in those two areas in today's NFL, you're gonna suck.
Other
It's
than
just
that,
yeah. So I mean, they paid Chandler Jones a huge contract. He has been if it wasn't for the Russell Wilson deal and how bad that has looked this past year, we'd be talking a lot about how terrible the Chandler Jones contract is for the Raiders. And they lost him. They didn't replace him out there in Arizona. They brought in J.J. Watt. He missed a lot of time. Their cornerbacks are terrible as well. So that's a team that needs a lot of help as far as the stats for that team. The Cardinals, underneath Vance Joseph, 2019 he was their first year as defensive coordinator. They finished 29th in EPA per play and 20th in Football Outsiders DVOA. But then he really did turn them around. 2020, they jumped up to 14th in EPA per play and 10th in DVOA. So that's a pretty significant jump. And then 2021, better again. 6th in EPA per play and 6th in DVOA. So pretty good turnaround there underneath that Vance Joseph Cardinals defense. 2022, though, not great. They had some injuries. Defensive line and cornerback was even worse for them. They just don't have bodies at those spots. But they finished at 20th in EPA per play and 24th in DVOA. So pretty bad year this last year. But
yeah, in 2022, you're right. I mean, he
yeah.
was 11th, 13th and 12th. That's okay. As defensive coordinator, again, the big turnaround there was in 2019. They were 32nd in yards and go to 13th. They go from 28th in points to 12th, and then 11th and 11th. Solid. You're right. I kind of glanced through that and was like, and then maybe I focused on last year where they were 31st in the NFL in points allowed. So he did have some success, relatively speaking, for sure, in Arizona. Good call on that. Good call from Michael Ranquillo saying good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Good morning, Michael. Good to see you again. He says go Broncos and buck 'em. I guess that's the new catchphrase for the year. And Gary coming in. Good to hear from you, Gary. Gary, it feels like we've been gone for a month to me. It really does. It's been a week, but again, it was needed, and it felt like I was gone a month, which is a good thing. He says, I'm feeling great. Well, good. He says, got my BFB crew back. Love you guys. Miss you. We missed you too. We missed everybody here. Like I said, I didn't realize how bad I needed it until I don't relax. I don't relax. My idea of vacation is usually exhaustion, go skiing until you can't move, scuba dive all day, do those kind of things. But I actually chilled. I probably read 6 books down there, Nick.
Wow.
Go through a book a day, 300, 400 pages, 6 hours of reading, cruise through it. And it was nice. Feel like my mind's sharp again. The reading sharpens me up. And Gary's always keeping us on our toes. Appreciate it for sure.
Appreciate you, Gary. Hopefully StreamYard is doing okay for me. It's getting a little glitchy for me today. I restarted the computer before we came on, so that's okay. I'm not totally sharp yet. On our flight back, we left Hawaii at like 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. And in the seat directly in front of me, I had a 9-month-old that was screaming bloody murder for 3 of those 5.5 hours. I'm not kidding. Screaming, not crying.
I believe you.
Screaming.
It's tough. And I realize, let me help you out with this, Nick, and maybe it'll help. You are the reason it used to drive me crazy. I've got hearing like you wouldn't believe. And your body is biologically hardwired to react to that sound. Because when you have a child and you hear across, the house, it's boom, I'm awake. What's up? What do I do? So that's why it's like that. But when you have your own child and you get on one of those flights, your reaction is very different. It's, oh, thank God, that's not my child. Let me put on some headphones. Oh, I understand. I'm just going to put on some headphones and take a nap. I get it. So I promise you, it didn't bother anybody more than it bothered me because my hearing's so good and I'm wired anyway. It changes. If you think as you get it gets better because you're like, your reaction is, and thank God that's not my child.
Well, not a lot of sleep, but we're catching up a little bit, hopefully slowly and surely. Mike Gibbons in here. Aloha, Nick, Scott, at Broncos Country. Happy to have you back. Good to see you. Dave Glassman in the house. Glad to have you back. Jetty Splash saying good vibes. Good morning. Absolutely good vibes. We got Diamond Rattler saying boom, let's go. Good to see you. Swink McLeod. Welcome back, guys. Thank you so much, Swink. We appreciate that. Kevin Gray saying morning, Nick and Scott in Broncos Country. Happy to have you back. Steve Kennedy, hey, I know that name. Saying morning, welcome back. Good to see you, Steve. Hope you're doing well. Keith in the house, saying nothing better than some OG Broncos for breakfast. Good to see you both. Aki Dragon saying Jim Irsay is very photogenic. He's an interesting person.
Aki must have seen that one I put up on my YouTube Shorts channel when I don't know if he wanted Jeff Saturday and was basically talked out of it or not. But if you go to youtube.com/Scott Kennedy, that's my channel. I put it in a shorts. And it says, I titled it like Jim Irsay, thanks, Jeff Saturday. In a 50-second clip, I bet he said 50 times. It was so uncomfortable. Finally it's like, all right, shut up. And then Chris Ballard started talking. The general manager's like, thank you. And then Shane Steichen's a wreck. I mean, he's practically bawling up there. It was, and then once they started talking football, he turned into the freaking Terminator, just flipped a switch. I'm like, all right. But it was Jim Irsay, just, man, relax and stay off camera, dude.
Smile and nod. Jake Gerard, hey guys, it's weird that I can't wait for change special teams this year. Hopefully a new kicker and punter. I think odds are pretty good. We'll see a new punter. I'm not sure yet about kicker, just because it's hard to find kickers out there. And I think and I'm critical Brandon McManus, but you see how some teams have some horror stories with the kickers going on out there, and I think this year was not fully McManus's fault. I think a lot of it was also from talking with people who are much more specialized in special teams. The holder was an issue as well. So the way the contract's set up, I think you will see a new punter, maybe a new kicker, but definitely I'd be shocked if we didn't have a new punter.
Yeah, it's cheap to move on from, and you can save some money. It depends on where you think you are. It's kind of like a bad team having a good closer. That's a luxury you really can't afford. And I think that Sean Payton will believe that they can come in and make a playoff run right away. I really do. Whether it works out that way or not. So, hey, we can afford to keep this kicker one more year if we think he's on the plus side of things. It's not, on the grand scheme of things, it's not overly expensive. Otherwise, you can save a little money and go get another kicker. Kickers aren't that hard to find.
Yeah.
But it's nice when you don't have to worry about it coming in. That they're going to be relatively automatic under 50 yards is a very good feeling.
Yeah. For me, kickers, there's a saying that should be 100% retired because it's totally genderfied with sexist, but little girls should be seen from, not heard. It's a terrible saying. Stupid, terrible, retire it. But for kickers, 100%. Kickers should be seen from, not heard. Brandon McManus, a little bit of a distraction out there and probably a little bit too much going on considering how he's played the last few seasons and what he's getting paid. So definitely on the hot seat. I would not be surprised if he's gone. My issues with the team, punters.
Did you see the movie Rockstar?
Yes.
Rockstar? Okay.
Yep.
One of the lead songs in that is how I've taught my little girl. Stand up and shout.
Yep. 100%. Do it. But maybe not your kicker so much, especially when you are not playing that well. Special teams this year for me, though, punter definitely up there for something that needs to change, but I have much more issues with what the coverage units have been. I mean, the Broncos have been terrible at fielding the football in areas where they can, flip the field or flipping it themselves. I mean, how many times did we see? God, I'm already forgetting the guy's name. The kick returner this season.
Vacation Washington.
Montreal Washington.
It'll be easier for me because these are like my first real impressions with the new Broncos, so they will imprint on my mind, and I'll call like the next kick returner Montreal Washington 50 times.
Yeah, I almost said Isaiah McKenzie, so that's my imprint of when I started covering. But just terrible kick returning, terrible coverage units. Not just the kicker and punter; it's the whole units have been abysmal, especially this last season.
Yeah, and Jesse was right. It was kids. Kids should be seen and not heard from. Yeah. So there wasn't gender, and I'm older than you, Nick. So that saying does go back a ways, and didn't work so well for me. I wanted to be heard.
Me neither, man. I would talk
you didn't listen. We had trouble. You treated me like a little kid and didn't listen to what I had to say. We had problems. Ask some of my teachers. Now, the teachers that respected you, we got along great.
I needed. If I'd have been born 10 years later, I'd have been medicated. I have zero doubt in my mind because I did all my work really well, but I had to stand at my desk. And if I was not constantly in my face, I was going to be talking to somebody around me. We have Clyde coming in saying, pretty sure Vance Joseph had 32nd ranked defense in Miami. Yeah, they weren't very good, and then the Broncos brought him on.
Yeah, it wasn't quite that bad. I had it in front of me. They were 18th in points and 29th in yards. So it wasn't that bad, but it wasn't great.
Yeah,
Unless they were 32nd the year before and move up to 18th in points. And you're like, okay, that's good. But otherwise, that has the feeling of, hey, this is a local guy, went to Colorado to me a little bit. But I wasn't around for that hire, but it does seem a little strange. If you had done that now after the big swing and gotten a first year defensive coordinator with the 18th ranked defense, you probably would have said, what? D'Amico Ryans was different. That defense has been really good for a while. So
I think the Broncos were
Patrick
very
Quilty, aloha.
good to see you, Patrick. Man, Hawaii, what a paradise. I see what in there getting to
we're getting pieces of what Nick is saying.
Did I just disappear?
It is a paradise. I've been a couple of times, and it is. If you can do it, it's actually easier for me to get to Europe now but when I lived over in California, I got over to Hawaii a few times. It was a pretty easy jump for me. Nick's going to take off real quick and reboot and come back in. So I will, I'm going to handle some of the chat and say hello to some folks here real quick that have come in. Dom Jaramillo comes in. He says, Nick and Scott, Broncos country, miss you boys. Thank you, sir. I think Nick actually froze up while he was leaving. So we'll get rid of that right there. And now it's just all of me, the big Zoom. Apologies for that, but that is a lot of billboard space that's available for rent. So glad everyone is doing okay. How'd you like the Super Bowl? And Nick, I'm glad you are home. Dom, this is a good chance for me to take over and tell you exactly what I thought of the Super Bowl. I thought it was on track for just an epic game. Epic. And I felt cheated. I don't know about you, but I felt cheated. You may have, and you guys have something against, the AFC West. You don't want to see Kansas City. I don't really care. I've got no love for the Philadelphia Eagles. If it's completely neutral, I probably would have said I would cheer for Kansas City more. I don't know. I don't really care. But I picked the Philadelphia Eagles, so I wanted the Eagles to win. That said, I don't really care. I was enjoying a great football game between two of the best teams, if not the best teams in the NFL. It was a terrific game. And I felt cheated. I really did. Kick the field goal. What would have made it? 38-35 was that the final score. Minute 50 left. Give the ball back to Philadelphia, and let's see what happens. I'm not saying the Philadelphia Eagles were cheated out of the Super Bowl because there's no guarantee that they would have won. That's a hell of a situation for Jalen Hurts, who hasn't quite, obviously he's never been 2-minute drill in a Super Bowl before down 3 ever. But man, I sure would have liked to have seen that chance. So as a fan of the game, and let's face it, 150 million people watching it in the United States, 100 million people watching this in the United States. How many of those are actually fans of the Philadelphia Eagles and Kansas City Chiefs? A small percentage of them, a very small percentage of them are. So we're tuning in for the spectacle. We're turning in for the game. And as far as the game goes, I felt cheated. I felt like I was cheated out of what should have been an epic ending. And really, Philadelphia fans should be pissed. But in a sense, Kansas City fans should be a little upset too, because from now until eternity, anybody that was alive to watch that game is going to say, yeah, but. Yeah, but. Yeah, you won, but. Did you? Did you? And as a competitor, I don't want that to happen, Nick. I don't want, we're talking the Super Bowl, and how'd you feel about the Super Bowl? The slick field I think that hurt the defenses a little bit, but I felt cheated out of what should have been an epic ending to one of the greatest football games at that level of all time. And I was cheated out of that by a flag happy ref. Nick, I'm not sure if you're hearing me or not. You're looking like I'm muted, so
I hear you.
I'm not sure. So and now I can't hear you. So on that note, but that's how I felt about the Super Bowl. Chase Wellner comes in and says, hey guys, you like the Zach Strief hire? I don't have a whole lot of comment on that one. Nick, I'm not sure if you can hear me yet. I don't have a whole lot of comment on the Zach Strief hire. I've looked at a few of the hires so far. There's nothing in there that's like, wow, or overwhelming, or, this is really progressive. It's just been kind of, a tight end here. Now the offensive coordinator is still out there. The defensive coordinator, I was a little surprised that they haven't reached out to the former co-defensive coordinator of the New Orleans Saints. There were two of them there last year. Ryan Nielsen was hired by the Falcons. The other one, and I've already forgotten his name, I looked it up before I came on the show. He's still available. He was being interviewed for the Miami Dolphins gig as well. Degeneration X, he comes in, he says, "Good morning, all." And Ernie Mays says, "Hello, Nick and Scott, and go Bronco country." And that last 3-minute diatribe probably made him have the shakes for not talking Broncos and talking Chiefs instead. But it was the Super Bowl, man. Nick, what were your thoughts on that game?
My thoughts were I was sitting on a beach for a bit, so that was pretty darn great. And overall, I don't think the fix was in, but just how many coincidences that helped the Chiefs the entire season just drove me nuts. And the NFL, if you have it's the same with the NBA with, Kobe or LeBron James. If you have the superstar face of the franchise, face of the league, forget the franchise, face of the league, you are going to get the calls like that. Just kind of how it sets up. There's going to be just an inherent bias. Oh, they have that guy. They must have gotten it right. So it was certainly frustrating. I'm equally frustrated with the AFC Championship game with the Bengals and how that played out with them. And I'm just so tired of Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. But you're going to have to figure out a way to beat them. It's going to be pretty tough. Andy Reid's not going to be there forever. But yeah, it's also Clyde comes in and saying, "Nick, it's like the Patriots getting the calls for a long time." If you have that guy, there's just going to be this inherent bias. I don't know if it's malicious. I just think there's something in there where you're watching and it's like, okay, I'm looking for that team because they are the best team. They're going to get the calls. It's just kind of just how the world works in these events.
I mean, but in every game, not just NFL, I'm talking in sports. You mentioned basketball. Man, you got to mug somebody to get a foul called in the last couple seconds. You've got to earn it. Not I've got my hand on his hip and maybe again, I felt cheated. That's how I put it overall. Was I felt cheated out of what should have been an epic ending, and it ruined the whole game for me. It really did. The game was just ruined. How I remember that game from now on, that call that ruined what should have been a great game. Now it's a crap call from an official. That's how that game will be remembered for me. And like I said, that's a little unfair to Chiefs fans too. If I was a Chiefs fan, I'd be a little pissed. We compete because we want to win, not have something handed to us by the freaking stripes. That would make me mad as a competitor. I don't want to win that way. I want to win because I was better than you that day, not for something like that. And it took, like I said, I'm not saying the Chiefs wouldn't have won anyway, but God, I would have liked to have found out. Quentin Caldwell coming in. Appreciate you, Quentin. Thank you, sir. Says, "Good morning, everyone. Hope you had a great vacay." I did. That's the first time I've taken a week off since 2016. So it was great. I'm going to have to do that more often, Nick. Tell the wife to sell some more houses.
Yeah, there you go. We'll have to, you guys keep donating and sending Scott and I away. We appreciate that coming in there. Hope you're doing well. Good to be back. We also got Ope Nation coming in saying, "Good morning, game Broncos country. Let's ride." Good to see you. Always appreciate you coming in. And I think you grabbed this one. Uh-oh. Can I pull it up here? There we go. Yeah. Chase Wellner saying, "How did you like the Zach Strief hire?" I like the Zach Strief hire. One of the indications of a hire being pretty good, in my opinion, is that when you see opposing fan bases and their writers up in arms about a move losing somebody, that means something to me. Now, obviously, it's a down the line, and the further you get from the head coach, the harder it is to tell what a guy's going to be. But I remember Zach Strief being a swing tackle guard for the Saints for a number of years, and he was a solid player out there, I think, from Indiana University. And seems like he's a really great up-and-coming coach. And just the thing that makes me confident about it is hearing Sean Payton talk about him as well. It sounds like this was a guy that he identified early as somebody that he wanted in there. I mean, I would even argue that if you ask Sean Payton who's the most important coach he's going to hire this offseason, he might say it's Zach Strief instead of the defensive coordinator, which is somewhat shocking. I mean, it goes to show how important the offensive line coach is. But we'll wait and see what the proof is in the pudding, kind of like with the Buckham phrase. I'm not going to use that until we're winning games after last year's Let's Ride fiasco. But Zach Strief, on the surface, it seems like you should have some good feelings and good vibes about the hire.
I thank you, Nick. There was a question here. I think it was Zebulon right here that I wanted to hit. It says Broncos hired Arch Manning's OC from high school as a quality control coach. That's a perfect job, entry level position for a high school coach coming up that wants to work his way, and that's a perfect job. But he says another Manning in Denver. Yeah, it don't work like that, man. It's not like I'm hiring the coach for the recruiting purposes. Um, we'll see if Arch Manning ends up becoming that guy. I haven't followed recruiting as closely to see who has been that guy. I know Bryce Young. I guess I have, because Bryce Young was um, when we were doing SI, we launched SI All American. He was our first number 1 overall player. Okay, that worked out pretty good. The next year it was CJ Stroud. The 2 years I was there that we did that. So it's been pretty good. But Trevor Lawrence was that guy. He was the last guy I remember that really had the hype all the way through. The guy that I was working with for Georgia, I said, who can I get? We need to do this campaign for Gatorade. They want to know who the next big thing is. He said, Trevor Lawrence. He was a freshman in high school, and he's done all of those things. Arch Manning's got that level of hype now. He has to prove it. And if he does, you're not going to be in any position to get him. He's going to be a number 1 overall pick. You don't want to be in that position. And even if you trade up to get him, this guy has nothing to do with that.
Yeah. Just with how the draft is set up and whatnot, it'd be cool to see. I'm guessing, if anything, maybe the Broncos got a tidbit of information from Peyton saying this guy is a bright mind, up and coming person. He'd be worth bringing in as an assistant, versus the connection to Arch Manning isn't about bringing Arch Manning in. It's the connection to the Manning family, and then therefore the Walton Penner group or anybody making decisions here in Denver. So we'll see what happens with Arch Manning here. There's other good quarterbacks in this upcoming crop too. I think USC brought in some people's number 1 quarterback. I know Tennessee brought in somebody who's a really interesting quarterback as well. So,
well, the $50 million, Deshaun Watson's contract will get more kids into football. Where a lot of y'all have heard me say it a zillion times that MLB is hurting the quarterback position more than anything, because anybody that's 6'3" with a 90+ mile an hour arm is playing baseball. They are playing baseball. There's exceptions, of course, I know. Yeah. But if you go look at the MLB draft, go look at the first 2 rounds, you're going to see 6'1" or better. You're going to see LHP, RHP, left-handed pitcher, right-handed pitcher, for half of those guys that are 30. And you do 30 a year of those guys and put them into football, quarterback's different. The quarterback position is very different. But now it's like, wait a minute, $250 million guaranteed? Maybe I'll play more football. Keith Prugman says, Michael Jordan pushed off. I'll go to my grave on that one. He did. But it was subtle. It was underneath, kind of behind him. As I'm pushing off on my microphone. And you don't call that. You don't call that at the end. It doesn't get called. He's probably pushed off a zillion times. And again, you see guys drive. They don't get the fouls called nearly as often. It's got to be a mugging to send a guy to the line to win it, because the refs don't want to make that call. We don't want them to make that call. Yeah. This guy did.
It's kind of like you see some defenses get away with a lot of holding and rough play styles. It's like, well, they can't call it on every play. So let's get, physical early. Let's find where that line is. Maybe dial it back a little bit, but they will not call it in the clutch moments. And that was the case. I'll go back to 2012 when the Broncos lost to the Ravens in the playoffs. They were mugging the Broncos, and that game was called differently than any game all season. But sometimes in the playoffs, they change the intensity and what's allowed to get what you're allowed to get away with. Jared Kidder coming in saying rigged. I don't know if it was rigged, but it certainly was tainted. We'll give that one. Akey with a funny comment here saying Broncos need to get some good actors. They can join the theater on the big stage next season. Hey, they better sign up. Russell Wilson maybe needs to. He's been method acting the quarterback spot a little bit, so maybe he can teach some classes for some other people in there. Our Austin Ryder saying good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good to see you, Austin. Hope you're doing well. Our guy Kevin, Savage Boy Kev 02 over on Twitch saying what would be good and bad if the Broncos were to hire Vance Joseph. So I will admit I did not watch too much Arizona Cardinals football the past couple seasons. They play the same time slot as the Broncos, so a lot of times I'm picking the Broncos over that. So they've been primarily a cover 2 defense out there. They've been horrible in the defensive line and dreadful at cornerback, specifically boundary cornerback. I think Byron Murphy, there's been a cornerback out there for them who's like 5'9". He's a good slot guy, but just they don't really have the bodies out there on the perimeter. And the defensive line has been absolutely dreadful. I mean, we could pull up the depth chart here and go through some of the names of the defense tackles and edge rushers on that Cardinals team. You'd be like, who? Are you serious? Those guys? But I think he'd be okay as the defensive coordinator in Denver. I think he did a pretty good job out there. He's not, I don't think, as good of a defensive coordinator or a defensive mind as the guy you lost in Ejiro Evero and also Vic Fangio, but I think he'd be fine in the role.
Fine. Fine's
Yeah.
a 4-letter F word to me.
Yeah.
Talking about the Cardinals, I watched them a few times. Obviously, I watched them when they played the Broncos. I watched them when they played the Falcons. And when Nick kind of brought it to my attention that they were cutting guys so they wouldn't have to send a 6th-round draft pick or something, these guys were in full tank mode. I mean, full tank mode. That's why I roll my eyes at the hypocrisy of, well, he was trying to encourage his coach to tank. Duh. Like, we don't see this away. You incentivize people to lose, and then you're surprised when they do. Wow. I'll clutch my pearls again on this one, Nick. They were the worst team in football, and they tried to be at the last 6 weeks of the season. So it's hard for me to get a read on this. And the numbers there were pretty good. And that's all I'm going off of, really, is the turnaround from year 1 to 2 was good, and to 3 was good. 4 was getting Cliff Kingsbury fired. And that happens. And there's so much drama with Kyler Murray, Cliff Kingsbury, and that Arizona team that if it was a bigger market, if that was the Cowboys, that's all we would have heard about, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
It's an NFL team, so it's still a decent-sized national news story, but it's Arizona Cardinals. Nobody pays attention to the Arizona Cardinals outside of, what is NFL. They don't matter. And I don't mean that meanly. Like I say that growing up as an Atlanta sports fan, I'm familiar with having birds that don't matter as your team. It's just nobody really cares. So Joseph did a decent job there. And I don't think if we were to come back as defensive coordinator, I don't think there'd be any hard feelings. It's a totally different staff, and it is a job. I've said that to y'all before. Nick, you've heard me say it before. You're going to outweight these guys as far as, I don't like that player. Well, he's going to be gone anyway. This is a job. These coaches they're jobs for them. They don't love the team the way you do. A lot of them have been chosen. They didn't have a choice where to play. And it's a job. It's a business for them. So come back. I'm going to do my damnedest for you if I'm your defensive coordinator. No hard feelings.
Yeah, and just circling back around to that Arizona Cardinals defensive line up here. I mean, I knew it was bad out there for them on the defensive front, but I didn't know it was this bad. Zach Allen, 3rd-round pick, been a kind of an interior inside-outside pass rusher for them. Not very good, former 3rd-round pick, but he's fine. He'll get an okay contract, but he might be their best player up front. Zach Allen.
No, we know who their best player was. He's retiring this year.
Yeah, he missed a lot of games though. I don't even know if he played a qualifying amount of snaps out there. But Zach Allen was one. They have Lecky Fotu, defensive tackle, Rashard Lawrence, defensive tackle. Raise your hand if you've heard those names. I remember them from the draft, but they have not been great out there. And then their pass rushers, their edge rushers, Myjai Sanders, you kind of remember him from Cincinnati out year,
rookie,
but he
though,
really did.
Rookie 2nd-round pick, probably
3rd-round pick. Did not do much of anything this year. And then Marcus Golden, who ideally would probably be your 3rd pass rusher rather than your number 1 edge rusher out there. So they were horrible at that position. And then at cornerback, I like Byron Murphy. He's fine. But Marco Wilson on the other side, Jace Whitaker. I mean, this is an absolutely dreadful Arizona defense. And probably because they've spent almost all of their value draft expenditure picks and linebacker. Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons hasn't really done too much for them in investing those premium picks at the off-ball spot.
And Deanna Henry coming in, speaking of premium picks, one of our premium picks. She says, good morning, Nick and Scott. Or actually, Scott and Nick. I always say his name first. What's going on with the DC spot? Who do you guys want for DC? Broncos for breakfast. Who do I want for me? Rex Ryan would be entertaining. It makes it easy to get sound bites and cut up video and do articles and all that kind of stuff. He'd be a media person's dream. Who do I want for you as a fan where you don't necessarily care about all that stuff? You just want to have a good defense. Rex Ryan's historically had really good defenses. And Nick, you talked about how the game has changed some. Well, it's also swinging back a little bit, with, more power football because Again, I've got 20 years on you. Give you another 20 years and you'll see this thing cycle through 2 more times. It goes big, it goes small. It goes, the thing that never goes out of style is big and fast. But it is, there was more running plays this year than ever, so how do I load up and stop the run? And then the passing game will come back, in full flurry. So, I don't care, Deanna, who's going to be the defensive coordinator. I'd like to see it get done first so we can start talking about it. But Rex Ryan would certainly be interesting. Vance Joseph did a pretty good job in Arizona given the circumstances. And then we'll see who else they're looking at.
Yeah, for me, I would like Sean Desai, I think the most, but that's because I'm a big believer in the Vic Fangio scheme. We can get into the nitty gritty when we bring those guys in, what you would be looking for, what the types of the key tenants and the bodies that you're looking for in that. But I like Sean Desai a lot. And Mike Zimmer would also interest me a good bit too. He's kind of seems like a shadow candidate for the Broncos right now. Michael Ronquillo bringing him up, Mike Zimmer still in play. So that'd also be an interesting name. And talk about no bull in that room. He would lean away from I think the love that you'd seen a little bit from some of the players. Now, the Vikings defensive players liked Mike Zimmer, but it was more of a respect than an adoration.
Michael says Mike Zimmer's still in play, which Nick has already read. I just wanted to repeat because when we talked about that, there were people that were like, well, didn't he just sign with the Colorado Buffaloes? And I wasn't on at the time. I was in the background and pulling my hair out, what's left of it. I was like, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He could quit tomorrow and take a job with the Denver Broncos. The contracts just might mean, okay, I have to pay $100,000 buyout, maybe. If he wanted to get out of that contract, there might be a buyout for him. No big deal. Contracts, especially at this level, they're just money. There's no like non-compete or anything like that. Especially when you're going from one level to the next level, either up or down. I mean, Bobby Petrino quit in the middle of the freaking year with the Atlanta Falcons and was announced as a coach the next day for the Arkansas Razorbacks. It doesn't matter. So if they want Mike Zimmer, they can get Mike Zimmer if it's mutual. If that's what they want to do, his job with the Colorado Buffaloes does not matter.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it also, just to bring it back to the Arizona Cardinals. The Texas Tech Red Raiders fired Cliff Kingsbury, and then he was hired as the offensive coordinator for the USC, and then a week later was hired as the head coach for the Arizona Cardinals. Yeah, failing out, that's still one of the craziest pathways to a head coach spot, but I digress. So if you were hired as a whatever in college football, an NFL team can pluck you, and vice versa as well. You don't see those moves happening as much in the same league, but from college to NFL, NFL to college, that's going to happen. So I'm not too worried about that. If the Broncos want him, they can get him. Richard Miles, sorry I'm late. Good morning, guys. It's all good to have you. We appreciate you. We also got K-Hop coming in saying, I heard Broncos defensive back coach Christian Parker was on the list as well. Would he be bad? You've heard me talk about him on here multiple times. He's apparently considered one of the best up-and-coming minds in football. If they went with him, that would be, I think, a little bit shocking considering he'd be green, but he's had tutelage underneath Vic Fangio now and Ejiro Evero, both, defensive-minded coordinators. Vic Fangio more linebacker, but I digress. Also coached underneath, who was the defensive coordinator that failed out last year at the Vikings that was underneath Ed Donatel as well. So he's had a
former Denver Broncos defensive coordinator.
But it's not a bad person to have coached under. And think about what. Go ahead.
I didn't even know he was in Minnesota until the playoffs when he was trending on my timeline because everybody was like, okay, if he's not fired tomorrow, I quit. The Vikings fans turned on him quickly.
Yeah, that's another team that I just don't know if they had the horses, especially on the defensive line. But Christian Parker, I mean, going from a positional coach to a coordinator and calling plays is totally different, and you'd just be speculating because you don't know what it's going to look like until you do. But as far as what he's done with the Broncos defensive backs, I mean, how good has got the likes of names this game, Caden Stearns, when he's been thrust into the spotlight out there, looked really good. Damari Mathis probably shouldn't have played this season, looked exceptional. Kawan Williams coming in there, exceptional. Patrick Surtain, I mean, coming in there and 20 years old last year, looking this good. I mean, Ronald Darby playing that well this season for also how the schemes changed in the back end for the Broncos, going from more of a match quarter defense to a cover 3, cover 1, cover 6 esque defense out there. Some of the same tenets as far as the disguising the safeties pre-snap with 2 deep and then 1 jetting down or both dropping back depending on what the coverage is. But he's been really good as a defensive backs coach. Again, really highly thought of. There was a couple athletic episodes this season where they talked about, Christian Parker being considered one of the best up and coming minds in football. So if he was hired, I think you should be excited about it, but also maybe a little bit nervous just because you don't know until you know.
Jeremy Shaw, one of our favorites, always here to support us, says, welcome back, boys. Hope your vacation's got you recharged. Me, for sure, I went east and then came back west. So I adjusted to an earlier time. So, getting up is no problem. Going east to west is really easy. Nick is finding out that going west to east sucks. So It's so much harder to go west to east when you get used to a later time zone and sleeping in and then having to get up 3 hours earlier. So I'm probably a little bit more charged up than Nick is right now. But I have full faith in Nick. Nick went on one of those trips where I need a vacation now. I actually took a vacation, which was nice. But Jeremy says Vance Joseph has to be floated as a candidate to soften fans on Rex Ryan. That's my theory. Only way it makes sense. I think that's actually kind of funny. We're going to throw out Vance Joseph out there so we'd get no backlash when it's Rex Ryan, because everybody will say, whew, thank God it wasn't Vance Joseph. Maybe we'll see. I'd like to see a little, personally, I wouldn't mind seeing a little diversity in age on the staff a little bit too. You went from all young guys to, all old guys. Let's diversify just a little bit.
Yeah, new ideas, new fresh, maybe bring in a couple people from the college game, because I do think that it's a trickle up in terms of innovation in the football side of things. But we got Mark Schrader coming in saying, welcome back, guys. Welcome back. Thank you so much, Mark. We appreciate you. Hope you're doing well out there in Texas, and hopefully spring is right around the corner for you. Hope you're doing well from your medical stuff. I know it's been a bit, but we haven't talked in a bit, and I haven't asked in a bit, so hope you're doing well. Know that can be a road to recovery. We got Clyde coming in. Brian Ferentz is the offensive coordinator. God, Scott, I don't want to go down an Iowa Hawkeye pathway.
Trolling you.
I know he is.
Kyle's trolling you.
Of course. Did you see the contract that they gave him, the incentivized contract for Iowa?
No, I read a joke one from, I don't know if y'all follow David Burge. He's Iowa Hawk he's got about 250,000 followers. He's a libertarian Iowa guy, does a lot of car stuff. But he said something about like $50,000 for a touchdown. And then, this. So I don't know what it actually was, but what was it as far as incentivizing goes? And the only way you can do that is if nobody else wants him.
Yeah, it's bad. He would not be, it's nepotism to the highest degree. The Iowa has to average 25 points a game. And then he gets this massive bump as well. But that also includes defensive and special teams touchdowns, which the Iowa Hawkeyes have been one of the top 3 defenses in football at that. I mean, why they wouldn't just have it be offensive points really seems like, as soon as it came out, everyone's like, what about, wait a second, the defense of the special team scores half the points. Does that count? So, yeah, just laughable stuff out there in Iowa, unfortunately. But hopefully not laughing in Denver very much longer. As far as the defensive coordinator goes, Rex Ryan would be interesting out there. For me, with Rex, one of the things, when I first started on the surface, I was skeptical. You'd mentioned it, we already have the circus in here a little bit this past season. I don't know if we need that much more of a attention, big personalities in there, especially with everything going on, could create some issues there in the locker room. But then I heard Rex Ryan, and it was a inflammatory comment, but it was on, I think it was whatever ESPN's early morning show is out there for football. And it was back in September, before even we were screaming about it. It was the end of September after the 49ers game, I think the day after. And Rex Ryan was saying, I don't know what they're doing out there with the play calling. The scheme is terrible. This isn't Russell Wilson's style of football. You need to run the football, be under center, and do deep shots off play action. That was after week 3. And if Rex Ryan can see that, then that's something we've been screaming on here as well. And this is the first time I saw this clip. So that's something we've been saying on here for a good bit as well. At least I think you have that in there in the backing as well. It does make it seem like it's another hire, though, in somebody in the building that is maybe not as pro Russell Wilson. And I'm curious what that environment looks like and how that culture is in there this season, if they start to be a little bit of issues.
We've talked about it a zillion times, and we've been away a week, so I'll feel like, that maybe everybody's forgotten. This isn't a 1-year deal. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a one-year deal. And you can hit the nuke button after 2023 and start over, including Russell Wilson. So part of the discussions, part of the negotiations, now I don't know this for a fact, but I'm not wrong. What are you going to do with Russell Wilson if he bombs out? What can we do? What are you willing to do? And this is Sean Payton asking the ownership. What are you willing to do? So, coach, we can get out of this thing after the 2023 season if we need to and start over. That's what it means. And like I said, I think coaches, especially this one, is arrogant enough to think that he can get the best out of Russell Wilson. And if you do, you're a playoff team, assuming everything else even stays close to where you were last year. If you can get Russell Wilson to be a mediocre quarterback instead of a bottom 20% quarterback, you're a playoff team. Yeah. And then you can build other things around. You get your picks back. There's going to be more flexibility with the salary cap. Russell Wilson takes a big jump, but so might the salary cap. It went up $20 million this year, Nick.
Yeah. Might go up even more next season with the Amazon streaming money coming in here. So we'll see what happens. Darius Simmons, 199 over on YouTube, saying, welcome back, guys. Missed y'all. Appreciate all the comments coming in. Also, while we were gone, Scott, I'm sure you had them too, saying, man, missing BFB in the mornings.
Nobody said that to me, but,
Oh, well. I missed you, Scott. I'm glad you're recharged, and I'll be getting there. The coffee's starting to course through my veins. Yesterday was rough. I went into work after landing, and yeah, I know. Wow. And because I already missed 5 days, and I like to keep my vacation days for the summertime, so that way I can go out there and gallivant in the wilderness out here in the Pacific Northwest. But yeah, no. So yesterday was rough, and today's getting a little better, and you guys are making it better, including Darius Simmons coming in and supporting us. So, any other news that you guys want to talk about before hopefully my internet will keep on chugging along here? It seems like it's been a little better here. Recently.
Give that hamster a little extra boost, that hamster wheel internet you got going on there.
I don't know. Maybe it's because you hadn't used it as much lately. So there's a question in here about, I don't know, there's been a little bit of back and forth on Broncos Twitter, but there's been some rumors out there that the Broncos might be shopping a potential big name player on the Broncos, given how limited the team is in terms of draft capital, potentially create some cap flexibility as well. In my opinion, the name that stands out to me is Garrett Bowles. I don't think it's Jerry Jeudy. I don't think it's Patrick Surtain. Now, everybody's available for the right price, but that doesn't mean they're full on shopping him or either of those guys. But I think it's Garrett Bowles is the guy that you could be talking about there. You might be able to get a second round pick or potentially like a third and a fourth for him, create $10 million in salary cap space. You can then go out there and maybe go cheap for left tackle for a year, get out from that contract, move on and rebuild that offensive line. Definitely tough to shake up the offensive line as much as if you're moving on from Garrett Bowles. But this is Sean Payton's team now. And if he's interested in moving on from him and going cheaper there for a year with a guy that he's handpicked or Zach Strief has handpicked, then so be it.
I think, I agree with how Eric was talking about it last night too. It says, okay, so you save $9 million on the cap that you get back because it's a 17. We'll just call it 10, just for round numbers. So you've got 18 on the cap with an $8 million dead cap hit. You save $10 million. Okay, well, you got to replace him. So 5 to 6 to there to get a replacement who is he going to be better? Not at that price. He's probably not going to be, but you don't know where he's going to be, which is going to, if he's fully healthy, then you should be able to get a pretty good pick for him. So $5 million in savings, maybe not quite as good as a left tackle and a second round pick. Is that worth it? Maybe.
It's hard to say. It really depends on what the Broncos' current coaching staff thinks of Bowles, what the market looks like for him, and where they're trying to go at that position. So there's no, not surprising out there. Garrett Bowles has a learning disability, and there could be some of the coaching staff coming in here that apparently preferred Ryan Ramczyk out there when they took him to the Saints instead of Garrett Bowles. So maybe they're not as big of a fan. Obviously, they were scouting tackles the year that the Bulls came out because they ended up taking Ryan Ramczyk instead. So we'll see. I think it's probably more of a long-term move than an immediate move also when you're talking about saving that salary cap moving forward and resetting the position somewhat. So we'll see. The Broncos are going to have a lot of turnover this season. But if they're moving on from Garrett Bowles, I think it's much more about the long-term perspective of the tackle position than it is what the offensive line looks like and what the left tackle spot looks like in 2023. I probably wouldn't be making that move unless I could get a top 50 pick this upcoming season. But who
Which is
knows?
what I
This is
said, a second rounder. You get a second rounder and $5 million in cap savings. Is that worth it?
You think about it.
Yeah, it's definitely worth thinking about. There's some talk in here about Sutton. Sutton's contract makes him cost prohibitive to move this year. It still has a bigger dead cap than cap hit. So there's got to be some finagling going on, and you could eat dead cap hit for 2 years, which you don't necessarily want to do if you can avoid it. Jerry Jeudy obviously would probably be, other than Pat Surtain, your most valuable trade piece. Justin Simmons could fetch you a decent sum and save you some money too. But do you want to trade your Pro Bowl safety? So when you start talking about big names, one of the questions is how many are there, and what would you consider a big name? Garrett Bowles, Russell Wilson, Sutton, is he considered a big name? I don't think he's considered a big name outside of Broncos country right now. Jeudy probably counts. Then who?
Surtain.
Draymond, maybe.
Yeah.
So what's considered a big name? Goodness gracious, coming in. I know who's a big name around here. I was actually going to check in on Ethan because I know he's been super busy lately after this show, but he's coming in, checking in right now. Says, welcome back, gents, from Hawaii and the Dominican. 2 of my favorite spots. Yeah, they're tough to beat. In my opinion, if there is a trade, it has to be Simmons or Jeudy. Bowles coming off injury and his contract won't fetch much and creates another hole. Yeah, I agree. You're going to have to work on right tackle, center, and left guard anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're creating a hole where you don't necessarily want one. And $18 million, you can restructure that and create some more space for sure. Put an extension on him, pay off his guarantee, and you can create some more space. I think he's got 3 or 4 more years left in him at a decent clip that you're not worried about kicking the can too far down the road. That as far as a return goes, to make it worth it, unless you just don't want Garrett Bowles, which we don't know. And that's what you're saying, Nick.
Yeah. That's the kicker on this. What does this staff view the value and role of Garrett Bowles on this team? If they don't value him and they think that they can sign somebody on a 1-year deal in free agency and get equal return, then they might prefer to move off that salary cap hit, the player, and get that draft pick return, and then get a player where you can reset the contract with a rookie contract out there for the next 4 seasons. So really, I think Garrett Bowles is a fine left tackle. I think he was not very good this last year before going down. But, and I've been a Garrett Bowles defender, I guess, for a while when people were really rough on him. Like, he's not that bad. He's probably league average. And now it's, okay, well, he's getting paid, pretty high money, including the guarantee.
I think at one point he was the highest cap hit offensive lineman in the NFL.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem as far as he's okay, but we're not getting value there. No. Ethan, the DWI guys coming in hot pink, always brings value, and glad you're doing well, and welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for the support for the show, my friend. But you're not getting value, and that's where fans, that are in tune to this saying, okay, he's okay, but look at his contracts. Going through that with, that was the Matt Ryan phase in Atlanta for a long time. Matt Ryan was a good quarterback, but he was a top 5 cap hit in the NFL. He wasn't a top 5 impact player in the NFL, and that doesn't jive with people.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. That's so we'll see what happens with Garrett Bowles this season. I think that a lot of it too is going back to the original source of the rumor. Mario out there doing some works, talks to a lot of players, son of the former Denver Broncos official team, like chiropractor, but he had tweets out there that I think people are missing. Some of the point here is that he pretty much danced around the rumor that the Broncos, or I guess not a rumor, but danced around that the Broncos approached Garrett Bowles with a contract restructure, and Garrett Bowles said no, rebuffed it, and then this has transpired into, okay, well then, since you said no to that, we might trade you. I don't know. Yeah. It could be the Broncos pushing on him a bit to force some leverage on him. We'll see how it plays out. As far as other big name players that could make some sense here for the Broncos to trade, maybe a Draymond Jones tag and trade. The way it sets up for him, he's been a really good player this season. The way the tag would work in this situation is that he's not going to see the tag money. It would be just the rights of him for a season, followed by a new contract immediately afterwards. if there's a team out there that's really looking for a versatile inside-outside 3-tech that can get after the pass rusher, I'd be happy to send a 3rd-round pick for him and to pay him if I was felt like I was a interior pass rusher away, especially because there's no guarantee you can sign him on the open market, or the Broncos could keep him in that regard. So I would be very interested from the Broncos perspective to do that, especially because there's no guarantee you're going to get a comp pick for him in 2024 if you let him walk.
Yeah, because you might sign your own free agent, which cancels that out. And
Yep.
I know and maybe I'm too close to it, watching this all that. He's just not a $20 million lineman for me.
No,
He's just not.
Yeah.
But again, okay, if he's 15, if his contract's 15 and I pay the extra 5 to have his rights and maybe trade him away, and someone goes, 3 years, $50 million with 40 guaranteed for him, and that's what they want to do and he wants to sign, okay. I just think it's I don't know, maybe it's not that risky. I just think I don't want to pay him 19, on a 1-year deal. I'd rather use that money in other places, and that's going to eat up a lot of my ability to address the offensive line, which is desperately needed. $19 million can get you 2 guards and a center, good ones.
I do think the tag in that situation, though, is going to be more of a keeping the rights of him for a little bit. He won't see that cap hit.
But the risk is that he does. When you're tagging him, the risk is that you can't unload him. It's risky. It's going to be a good poker match. We've talked about this a zillion times as far as y'all have heard me say the negotiations for the players, for the coaches, this whole thing is a poker game. Who's after whom, and I have to make this trade and I want to keep his value down. So I have to make sure I'm talking to that guy. There's going to be a lot of that goes on with Draymond Jones and trying to do what's best for the team, and not necessarily for what's best for Draymond. I mean, that's what it boils down to. Yeah. Draymond has to do what's best for Draymond. The team has to do what's best for the team. Hopefully those things come together, but there's no guarantee that they will, because they might have very different valuations on each other. It's like, no, you tag me, I'm going to sit out, or you tag me and I'm going to play on a tag. And now you got $20 million into a guy who's solid. I don't think he's I just don't think he's a top 5 defensive lineman. And that's what you'd be paying him.
Yeah, no, he's more in the 10 to 15 range, in my opinion. But again, we'll see how it plays out. And if the Broncos can get a bidder for him, somebody wants to send them, multiple 4th-round picks, or a 4 this year and a 3 next season, with Denver sending back a 5 in 2024, then I think there could be a market out there to work that around. And it's almost too bad the Broncos didn't trade him at the trade deadline, because now you're risking losing him for absolutely nothing, because there is no guarantee that you're going to get that 2024 comp pick. And the fact that it's a comp pick also means it's not going to be earlier than the 97th pick, whatever it is, 32 times 3, and probably less than that still. But guys, we do have to start wrapping up here. I got to get moving today. Guess what I got to do today, Scott? Dentist. Fun times. Going to pass out in the dentist chair. So going to be a good time. Luckily, my internet now seems to be working up about halfway through the show, even though I rebooted my computer about 10 times this morning and said, hey, you have a software update. I asked you that this morning, computer. Why didn't you let me do that when I typed in any updates? But I digress.
I'm going to trigger you on this one.
Okay, I'm ready to be triggered.
No, this phase of the game is so near and dear to your heart. There's a lot of talk in here about Montreal Washington.
Okay.
And your thoughts on, is he part of the team? Was he a good pick? Et cetera, et cetera. Nick, was Montreal Washington a good pick? Is he a part of this team in 2023?
He's already in the roster. He got 3 years of control with him. He was not a handpicked player of this upcoming coaching staff. And apparently, Dwayne Stukes was a big advocate for bringing him in here. So he's going to have a chance, I think, to compete for this. A fresh slate, in my opinion. Everybody, every single person going to have to come in and compete. I don't care what you did before. From the quarterback all the way down to the kick returner, come in and compete and show us what you got. But I think there's just as good a chance that he's not on this team next year as he is starting as the kick returner again. They're going to have to bring in competition. And if he wins the job, good for him. If not, sayonara. And was it a good pick right now? No, it wasn't. If you're taking a 5th-round player, that could have been a really good special teams gunner or something like that, or somebody who could have developed into an interior offensive line that could have given you some more depth later on, or a tackle or anything, wide receiver that would have been better. Or running back. God, you know how bad it could have been Isaiah Pacheco. Then we're totally talking about a different running back room here for the Broncos. That'd have been a good spot to take one last year. So right now it doesn't look like a good pick. He was bad last season, but I would be fine giving him a chance this year. He's already on the roster, 3 years of cost control left. Go earn it. If not, thanks for your time. Good luck with the rest of your career.
The Twitter answer for that for Nick, let me sum up for you, was he's got to be better than he was last year. He wasn't good enough last year. Whether it was talent, potential, or whatnot, even he was surprised when he was drafted. He probably would have been there as an undrafted free agent, and he used a 5th on him. That right now looks like a wasted pick. Can you salvage something? We will see. But he did not have a good 2022, especially for a guy that was drafted. You had one job, especially for a guy who had one job, and that was returning kicks. It didn't quite work out, but it doesn't mean it's over. But right now, that looks like a bad pick.
Yeah, it does. And can a 5th round pick be a bust if you're drafting somebody just to be a specialist? Yes, they can. So Michael Ronquillo coming in saying, great show today, Nick and Scott on Broncos for Breakfast. Go Broncos. Thank you so much, Michael. We appreciate you. We appreciate everybody coming in. I'm glad to see my internet machine is starting to, it seems like working pretty well here. It's once Scott and I flip spots. I guess we needed to, switch our positions a bit here, shake things up. But good to be back. Had a lot of fun today talking about Vance Joseph, Rex Ryan, and whatever news coming next for the Broncos. Haven't heard very much about the offensive coordinator spot. And unfortunate about the Chiefs and how that game played out. But in the past now, we're all on to the 2023 season now, where things are looking up in Broncos country, hopefully, and going to be a lot more, no guarantees, but hopefully a lot better football in the Mile High City this upcoming season.
I would guarantee that the football will be better. Even if the record's not, the football will be. There were some games out there. What was it? That Jets game? That was was that
the
was
Colts?
The one, I think
the
Zach
Colts
Wilson,
game.
that was like the worst football game I've ever seen.
The Colts game. The Matt Ryan, Russell Wilson. That one took years off my life.
There was a question last night that I answered the Colts game. So what was the worst offensive line performance you saw last year? And thank you, Michael. Appreciate you as always. And I said the Colts. That was the worst offensive line performance I saw from the Broncos. I'm like, it was just, nobody was blocking anybody. And frankly, it was on both sides of the ball. You know, that was when Matt Ryan was getting sacked 10 times a game. And it was just like, okay, it's 3rd and 6, sack. 3rd and 6, quarterback hit. All game. It was pathetic.
Yeah. God, that one. There's a lot of bad football last year.
Side jar.
Hopefully going to be better. Yep, side jar. At least it wasn't the 100% jar. But guys, we're going to have to wrap it on up. Got to get on out of here. You guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. The numbers picked up as the show went on. Oh, Nick and Scott are back. Nick and Scott are back. And going to be here for a good bit going forward. I don't have anything scheduled until the end of May now. So it'll be long after draft season before you guys are missing me again, as long as the world continues to spin. Make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Also follow us at BFB_pod and at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you're joining us on Facebook, facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as the ticker says there underneath, please subscribe, like, and share over on YouTube. You guys are great. Really fun being back. Sorry, my internet was a little bit touch and go there early on, Scott. But thank you for holding down the fort. And Andre F saying, don't leave us again, guys. I don't know. I think Scott and I enjoyed our vacations a little bit too much to work as much as we did there during
we'll have to do some stuff on location, though, maybe. We're coming up on 2 years, like almost that Nick and I have been doing the show together. I think we started in March.
It was March.
Because then we went to like 3 days a week or something in April right before the draft. So we started mid-March, I think. So we're coming up on 2 years that we've been with y'all, and love it. Keep doing it.
Yeah, you guys are great. Good to be back. Hopefully Scott and I can keep these tans on for a little bit. But you guys continue to choose kindness and compassion. Again, thanks for joining us again today. We'll see you again next Monday morning. But until then, choose kindness and compassion. Go Broncos.